Hey everyone, my name is Lindsay Neely. I will be discussing servant leadership and organizational climate in South African private schools. This presentation is for Dr. Patrick Bennett and also for EDU 611. My first slide here is just the introduction of what I will be covering. First, I'm going to go over what servant leadership is. We will be discussing organizational climate, some prior research done in 2018, the aim of the new study in which I will be discussing in this presentation, the research and the findings of it, and correlations. I would have to say throughout this class, transformational leadership was my favorite. I do believe it's still up there, but servant leadership is at a tiebreaker right there. So servant leadership is just a very unique approach. It gives the idea that the leader serves and doesn't lead, which can seem contradictory and bewildering, but it is still a very unique approach. It has a lot of value. It focuses on selflessness of the leader, and it places the utmost importance of the needs of the followers. They are the most important. It's about how leaders are being attentive to the concerns of their followers. They are having empathy with them, and they're also nurturing them. The follower just comes first. The leader wants to empower them, help them develop their full personal capacities and possibly be more than what they are expected to be. The organizational climate is basically just how the environment feels. It's the employee's subjective perceptions of how their work environment affects them as individuals. A positive work environment can make people perform higher than expected, more than what is expected of them. In a positive climate, it can result in the success of the organization overall. There was a study done in 2018 of Advantage Public Schools in Gauteng, South Africa. Teachers reported that their principals successfully practiced and nurtured servant leadership characteristics. Some of those are organizational stewardship, wisdom, and persuasive mapping in their daily actions. And then teachers at public secondary and primary schools also reportedly perceived servant leadership practices positively. And since it seems that servant leadership is beneficial and common in public schools, investigation of potential effects of servant leadership on South African private schools are considered in this study. And since the private school sector is of the top performing schools, it's causing expansion due to this and the desire of the parents wanting quality teaching, learning, and high pass rates for their children. The aim of the study I will be discussing the results of was to describe prominent servant leader characteristics as practiced by private schools as leadership, to define the most prominent constructs of organizational climate as implemented by private schools as leadership, to determine the correlation between servant leadership practice and the organizational climate of private schools, and to determine the influence of socio-demographic characteristics on the perception of the servant leadership paradigm and the organizational climate theory. The quantitative approach involved 249 people, all employed as educators from primary and secondary private schools. Each person took the servant leadership questionnaire, which consisted of 8 characteristics of empowerment, accountability, standing back, humility, forgiveness, courage, stewardship, and authenticity. They also took the climate survey questionnaire by Castro and Martin. This study found that private schools' leadership exhibits the characteristics of the servant leadership practices of empowerment, stewardship, accountability, and humility the most. The weakest was forgiveness, and the strongest was accountability for servant leadership. The weakest for the organizational climate was remuneration and rewards, and strongest was organizational image. The study did find some correlation between the two. The correlation consisted of 13 correlations between the servant leadership overall score and the 12 different groupings of the organizational climate. The correlations were positive and statistically significant. A high score in organizational climate correlates with a high score on the servant leadership scale, and vice versa. The overall conclusion of the study confirmed that private school leadership displays the organizational climate groupings of organizational image, teamwork, work environment, and leadership as priorities that increase constructive organizational climate in the school setting. Private school leadership demonstrates the servant leadership characteristics of which empowerment, accountability, stewardship, and humility were the most practiced characteristics. The organizational climate categories of leadership, teamwork, and work environment and organizational image were prioritized. Servant leadership influences the school climate of private schools constructively. And this last slide here is my references. Thank you for taking your time to watch my presentation. I hope to see you all in the next class, and I hope you have a wonderful day.